Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another exciting morning at Chem 1105 with your host, me, Dr. White. Hi, everybody. It's Friday. And for those who came in late, tomorrow, Saturday, I get to do battle with Mother Nature. In other words, mow my lawn. In my backyard, I've got some weeds and bushes to trim and cut down. Exciting. I'm going to try and get out by 7 tomorrow morning because it's probably going to be scorching like today. All right, a couple important things. First of all, on Tuesday, if you don't have a calculator, you should buy one. The TI-30X is solar, so you don't have to worry about your battery burning out or going dead on you. I don't think they'll burn out. Well, there was a story in the news, somebody's cell phone caught fire as a plane landed. But anyways, buy one. They're inexpensive. You can get them just about anywhere. I think Walmart has it, Target has it, Home Depot has it, and I'm pretty sure Office Max, or whatever they call themselves this month, has it also. Probably get it just about anywhere. Probably get it on Amazon too. So I'm sure you can get one. If you have a fancier one, you can use that. On Tuesday, during our lab lecture discussion, I will teach you how to use this and other calculators with scientific notation. All right, also, from my experience during the summer, I'm going to start reminding you heavily the lab we did on Tuesday, this last Tuesday, is due this coming Tuesday. Hand it in. It's an easy 10 points. Your grades determine on points. You don't want to lose a lot of points by not handing in labs. Now, if you have problems with labs, remember in my class, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Ask. Don't forget on Monday, I'll have my office hour from 5 to 6:15. So if you have problems with the first safety lab, or lab one, the safety lab, come to my office hour and ask questions. That's why I have office hours. All right. I think that's about everything. Yep. Oh, one other thing. Today we'll finish chapter 1, and therefore on Tuesday, I will also go through the practice problem set for chapter 1. Make sure you do it before I do. So if you have any questions, you can ask questions. Do the practice problems. They help you get a good score on the test, which means you'll get a good score or grade in my class. Hint, after test number 1, you'll understand why I call them practice problems. Boy, how many of you are familiar with Monty Python and the Flying Circus? Great TV program. And a famous skit goes, let's see, wink, wink, hint, hint, say no more. It's on YouTube, I think, that one. Make sure you do the practice problems. Finally, one more thing, and I think I'll do it also on Tuesday. Well, Tuesday is going to be a busy day next week. I will go through at the end of, near the end of the lab discussion period, I will go through my method that I developed that eliminates test anxiety. And it works. It's been working for students who have problems on tests because they get real nervous. After learning my method, it takes about 10, 15 minutes for me to explain it and teach it to you. They go from getting F's, D's, and low C's to high B's and A's, and very high A's. So that will be next Tuesday. All right, let's get back to work. We're talking about significant figures, scientific notation. And when we talk about significant figures, I will never ask you what are the guidelines, but you need to know them. And the first one is all non-zero numbers are significant. Zeros may or may not be significant. It's still pretty worthless to say that. But let's talk about zeros. Lead zeros at the beginning of the number are never significant. Confined zeros, those between non-zero numbers, are always significant. Trailing zeros, that's zeros at the end of a number, are significant if a decimal point, is present in the number. You can actually see it. Trailing zeros, those at the end of a number that are not significant if a number lacks an explicitly shown decimal point. And time for you to have some fun. And on a test, if I were to put this 2 points each, I would spell out significant figures, but Dr. White's being lazy today. All right. Oh, it's fun time. For each A, B, C, D, and there's no F, so A, B, C, D, and E, why don't you determine how many significant figures are in those numbers? Have some fun. And hopefully everybody can see my whiteboard. Thumbs up, people, you can see it. Well, I see people working on it. Thank you, everybody. And for those of you who have your web camera on, thank you. For those of you who don't, if you'd like to turn it on, please do. Remember, all non-zero numbers are significant. Zeros at the beginning of a number are never significant. Zeros at the end of a number, no decimal, are not significant. Zeros at the end with a decimal are significant. And zeros confined in between non-zero numbers are always significant. Now, one bad thing about being on Zoom, I can't do what I normally do in a classroom, which is I tell students, when you're done, look up and smile. But I can ask, you have a question, Sergio?
Yeah, do you want us to identify what the significant numbers are, or would you like us just tell you how many?
Yeah, how many, like, is there 3, okay. 10, 20? Very good question. Thank you. And remember, all questions are good questions in my class. And the votes are coming in. And thank all of you. I'd like to thank all of you for coming today, because sometimes when we have this Monday, Wednesday, and Friday plus the Tuesday lab, students forget to show up on Friday, and you didn't. Thank you. All right, let's do it. A, how many significant figures? 1, 2, 3. Therefore, 3 significant figures. All non-zero numbers are significant. Now, B, zeros at the beginning of a number are not, but non-zero numbers are. So this would have 2. Oh, let's look at C. Now, there's no decimal point, and therefore zeros at the end without a decimal point are not significant. Non-zero numbers are. So that would have 3. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I counted correctly. Ooh, here's a decimal point. If you didn't see it, now you do. And zeros at the end are always significant with a decimal point. So this non-zero number would be, but this 0, this 0, this 0, and this 0 would all be significant. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's 5 significant figures. And finally, I threw in everything but the kitchen sink on E. Non-zero numbers are significant. Zeros at the end with a decimal point are significant, and zeros in between non-zero numbers are significant. So all these numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this has 6 significant figures. And that's how you do significant figures. And when we finish this chapter, practice problem for Appendix A2, A4, you will see that I have some problems for you to do this. This is a very important skill you should have for my class. Any questions on significant figures? And when you want to ask a question, you can either turn on your microphone or ask it in chat. All right, let's move on to the next thing I talked about. And that's not it. That's it. That's rounding off numbers. And rounding off numbers, the rules are the first digit if the first digit to be deleted is 4 or less, simply drop it, and all the digits after that. This is for numbers x point, x, y, 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 or whatever. There are other ways when you have larger numbers, but for this class, you're always going to have a number between 0 and 10. And these rules apply. If the first digit to be deleted is 5 or greater, then that digit and all that follow are dropped, and the last retained digit is increased by 1. Let's take a look at this. I'll do a couple, then I will share the fun. And if we look at A, and I'll do this one so you can see how it's done, in case you didn't catch it yet on Wednesday. How do we round this off to 3 significant figures? We look at the first significant figure, then the second, then the third. We want to round off to 3. So the fourth one, and I always use a double squiggly line to look at the number you're using to determine how to round off. I don't know how I came about that, but it works well for me and hopefully for you. is 6. Is that 5 or higher? Yes. So I'm going to drop all this and increase the 1 in front by 1. So the answer here is 2.74. And let me do one more. B, round this off to 3 significant figures. Keep the first one, keep the second, keep the third. We're trying to do the 3 significant figures. So the fourth one, significant, is what we use to round off. Is that 4 or less or 5 or higher? And hopefully I'll pick 4 or less. So I'm going to drop that and everything else. And I don't change the numbers I already had. And that would be your answer. Now let's do one more, because Dr. White gets in my 3 significant figure run. And on Tuesday, I'll show you why. Hint, slide rule. If you don't know what a slide rule is, you'll find out on Tuesday. You don't need one, but anyways, let's do 4 significant figures, round off. And for C, how do you round this off? And by the way, that's the 9. If you ever see a number on the screen, you can't figure out what it is, a good question in my class is to ask me, what the heck is that number? And I'll tell you, or you might phrase it nicer. All right, 4 significant figures we want to round off. Keep the first one, keep the second, keep the third, keep the fourth. This is the next one after the last one we keep, we use to round off. Is that 4 or less or 5 or higher? Hopefully I'll pick 5 or higher. I'm going to drop this. Since it's 5 or higher, this number right in front gets increased by 1. And that's how you round off the 4 significant figures. Now, let's do a couple. And I'll let you try some. And there are 3 for you to try. Round those off to 3 significant figures. And have fun. If I say have fun enough, you might think this is fun. See how sneaky I am? And I am. All right, looks like everybody's done, so I better get to work. How do you round A off to 3 significant figures? Well, you keep the first, keep the second, keep the third significant figure. You learned this earlier. We practiced how to determine significant figures, and therefore we use this to round off. Notice that is 5 or higher. So I'll drop all this after the decimal point, increase this by 1, and the answer would be 1.68. Now let's do B. 3 significant figures, 1, 2, 3. And this is the number I'll round off. And what do I have? It's 4 or less or 5 or greater. It's 5 or greater. So I'm going to drop this and increase this by 1. So I'll get 2.12. I realize I should have given you another example, which I will in a second. And finally, let's look at C, because this is something you should realize how to do. Keep the 2, keep the 8, keep the 9. The fourth number is 9. Is that 4 or 5 or greater? Yes. So I'll increase this by 1, but that becomes 10. Well, then this also increases. So what this becomes when you drop these is 2.90. Does everybody see what I did there? When I increase the 9 to 1 by 1, it becomes 1.0, or this, and you add it to 0.8, and that's that. And notice this has 1, 2, and 0 after decimal, 3 significant figures. And let's do one more, which I forgot to give this case. And luckily I remembered, so round that off to 3 significant figures. All right, I think everybody's done. Let's do it. Keep the 7, keep the 8, keep the 0. Use the 1 to round off. That's my fourth significant figure. That's the one I used to round off. Is that 4 or less? Yes. So I'm going to drop everything, that and everything afterward, and this becomes 7.80. And that's how you round off. Now, later in a little while, you'll learn why it's important to learn how to round off. But first, it's time for a story from Dr. White. And my stories are true stories. They are. Now, long time ago, I worked as section head of research and development for nitrogen derivatives of all North America for a company called CHEMI, which since became AkzoNobel, and then they sold half of it and it's now called Nourion. But anyways, part of my job was to solve problems for the products I was responsible at all our plants. And we were having a bad problem making certain products to what's called our specifications. Every chemical that's made, every product that's made has what's called specifications, things you measure. Like if you go to buy a car, you're going to have, when you buy something, your specification is, does it have 2 or 4 doors? And if you ask for 4 and they give you one, oh, here's your new car. No, I didn't want 2 doors. It's out of specification. And you can't, nobody's going to buy it. So it's important. Well, we are having problems with one of our suppliers, important supplier. A supplier is someone that sells you chemicals. In the chemical industry, we call that raw materials to us to make into our products. And it was causing a lot of problems and headaches. And I investigated and I was pretty sure what the problem was. And I worked with this company who was our supplier to help them solve that problem. And I did help them solve it, which solved my problem because our company no longer had problems and made my life easier. So I was happy. Well, I impressed that company a lot. And that company, called then Unichem Chemicals, which was part then of Unilever, like Bird's Eye Food, Lipton Tea, were so impressed. And their laboratory manager, who's in charge of research and a quality control lab. Every plant has what's called a quality control lab, where you test the product you're selling to make sure it meets the specifications. Well, they called me up and said, our research director, our laboratory director is retiring. Would you like the job? And I said, no, I'm not interested. Well, after a couple more phone calls, they said, at least come and meet our CEO and our vice president technical, who you would be reporting to. They'd like to meet you. I said, all right. It was a trip to New York. And I figured I'd enjoy a trip to New York for today and a good dinner. They always take you out at my level for good dinners on a interview trip like that. And I went there and I figured, all right, I did it. I wasn't really that fired up about the job, but they really wanted me. And they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. No, they didn't offer to kill me. They doubled my salary. Yes, doubled it. And at that point, I said to the company I was working for, here's my 2 weeks notice. And I went to work for the other company. Now, this company, the new one I'm now working for, was selling products to the company I used to work for. And I knew all the people, the company I came at, especially at the plants. Well, this one major product, we were going to ship one day 4 tank wagons. The tank wagon is the vehicle that delivers chemicals to chemical plants, but you've probably seen a tank wagon at a gas station. Have you ever seen the vehicle that delivers gasoline to gas station? That's a tank wagon. They're standardized, 5,000 gallons, 40,000 pounds. Well, we're shipping 4 of them. That's 160,000 pounds. That's about $160,000 in chemicals. And there was a special specification for this product called the iodine value. And this is written into actual legal contracts. And as the laboratory manager now at this new company, I had my office. This is before we had them on computers. Now it's on computers, a long time ago. In fact, that company, I was one of the first people to get a computer in my office. Nope, it's not the president of the United States or anybody else important. 2 more rings. Oh, they gave up already. But anyways, so in the contract, there's this iodine value, also called IV. And it was 95 minimum. And we were shipping it, but you could measure it to 3 significant figures. And our lab got 95.4. So we shipped it. And one of the things when all chemical companies, the laboratory manager, quality control manager, has to sign off on what's called a certificate of analysis. Some companies, which I like calling C of A, or some of them I didn't like. One company I worked at called them certs. And if I don't sign off on that, the guard at the gate will not let those tank wagons off our site. So I signed off and we shipped them. And then the QC manager at the other company that got these measured it, and they got 94.8, which in his mind was below specification. So he called me up, and I knew this guy quite well. I'd worked with him for years. And he said, we're rejecting your tank wagons, all 4 of them. They're under spec. I said, what did you get? He said, our lab got 94.8. And I said, we got 95.4. And I said, you have a copy of the contract, don't you? He said, yeah. And I got my copy. We're on the phone. I said, what does it say in there? 95. And he said, yep, 95. I asked him, how many significant figures are there? And he said, 2, 9 and a 5. And I said, well, you've got to round your number off 94.8 to 2 significant figures. What do you get? He said 95. And I said, if we round mine off to 2 significant figures, what do we get? 95. And I said, well, we meet the minimum. You can't reject it. At that point, he got mad at me, and I heard some words that I can't tell you right now. I said, you can't reject them. And he was quite livid. And I was sorry that I had to play that trick on him, but it wasn't really a trick. It was in the legal contract. Whoever wrote it should have written 3 significant, not 2. I'm pretty sure our side company, the sales manager, was smart enough to do that. And I said, all right, take it and let me do something. I'll call you back in a couple hours. Well, I went to our production manager, and who was Australian, nice guy, Mike. And I said, here's a problem I just did, and I just made a friend of mine quite mad at me. I'm never going to do that again, even though it's 95 minimum. If our lab has anything 96 or less than 96, I will not sign a C of A, the certificate analysis, and you can't ship it. And he got mad at me. He went to our boss, and we called in, and boss said, he's right, we shouldn't have. He got mad at Mike a little, even though we were all friends. And so I had 2 people mad at me. Well, the first one, I called up the guy at AXO, who I knew, the QC manager. I said, I know you're mad at me. Can I come out? And this is in Morrison, Illinois, which I'd been to many times when I worked for that company to help solve problems. Can I take you out to dinner next week? He said, yeah, let's talk about it. I took him out to dinner and got him good and drunk, and he was happy after that. And I took him to a fancy restaurant. Oh, by the way, chemists know how to party hard, and good chemists know how to hold their liquor. And then the same thing, by the way, when I worked at that company and other companies at my level, I had a company credit card. I think at that company, my company credit card limit was $50,000 a month that I could charge to, especially like when I went to Europe or throughout the United States, I could come close to that. But anyways, and the following week, I also took our plant manager out to lunch, company paid for it, and got him good and drunk, and he was happy. And afterward, they realized I had called the right call, and we never had, but that's significant figures. Contracts are written with them. Now, why talk about significant figures? Well, when you have measurements, the more significant figures you have in a number, the more accurate it is. The more significant figures you have in a number, a measurement, the more accurate your measurement is. Well, what if you're doing a calculation with 2 different measurements and they're not the same significant figures? What do? Well, there are rules for that. Let's learn that. And by the way, I hope you enjoyed that story. Not to say you should be alcoholics, but alcohol does play an important role in business. Now, we have what's called operational rules for different math operations. I will never ask you what these rules are, but I'll expect you to know how to use them. Now, let's go through multiplication and division. The number of significant figures in the answer is the same as the number of significant figures in the measurement that contains the fewest significant figures. Again, the number of significant figures in the answer is the same as the number of significant figures in the measurement, meaning the numbers you are multiplying or dividing, that contains the fewest significant figures. All right, let's look at some examples. What does this mean? Hopefully all know they still teach multiplication tables when you were in grade school? All right. Now I don't think they do it because everybody's got a calculator. When I was there, they did. 2 times 2, you know, is 4. But what about this? .00 times 2.0. Well, oh, look, let's look at this number. This has 3 significant figures. This has 2 significant figures. Oh, this is the hard part. You got to know which number is lower. Hopefully I'll pick 2. So my answer has to have 2 significant figures. 2 times 2 is 4. And when you have to add significant figures to a whole number like this, decimal point 0, and notice this has 2 significant figures. And here, this is 1, this is 1, this would be 1 significant. So this is where it plays a role. Now, where it gets exciting is, or confusing, which we'll practice, is with a calculator. Now, calculator likes to go nuts with significant figures, and especially with division. I'm going to be using a spreadsheet, which helps you see it better, but the same thing happens on a calculator, which means I also have to open a spreadsheet. All right, everybody see a spreadsheet on there? Let's do something interesting. Now, I'm going to take 21.0 and divide it by 2.0. Now, notice 21.0, how many significant figures? 3. 2.0, how many significant figures? 2. Now, when I hit enter, my calculator gives me this one. So I have to round it off, and this is not a good example because I didn't teach you higher numbers, but let's do another one. Let's do scientific notation. E3 means 10 to the third. And now I'll hit enter. But before I do, notice I have 2.188 times 10 to the fourth, or 10 to the third. And that's 4 significant figures. I have 1.76, E means times 10 to the fifth. I'm dividing. I hit enter and look at the number my calculator gives me. And this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 significant figures. But how do you round this off to 3? You keep the 1, keep the 2, keep the 4. And therefore, 3 is the number we use to round off. We drop that and 1 and the 1 to 8. So the correct number on a test or in real life would be 0.0124. And that's a problem you have to deal with a calculator. It gives you a lot of significant figures. And therefore, when you multiply and divide, you get the same number of significant figures as the number that has the smallest. Let's do 1. Now, here I'm multiplying 3.55 times 10 to the squared, that's what the E is, times 1.6 times 10 to the third. Now, the question is, which is the smaller, the number with less significant figures? I'm going to give you time right now. You determine how many significant figures in 3.55 and 1.6. Go. Oops. And the number was, the first one was 3 and the second one was 2. So you should have two significant figures. Now your calculator might spit out a number like this. If you wrote 5.68000000, I'm going to take off 1 point. It was on test 1, test 2, test 3, test 4, and the final. Underneath where it says your name, it will say, please use proper significant figures for all calculated answers. If you put the wrong significant figure down for a calculated answer, I will take off a point. If you lose 6 or 7 points each test, or maybe more, it's going to hurt your grade. So this is important for you to know in real life. So round 5.68 times 0.00000 times 10 to the 5th to two significant figures. All right, let's do it. Keep the 5, keep the 6, use the 8 to round off. Is that 4 or less or 5 or higher? Hopefully I'll pick 5 or higher. Therefore, I'm going to drop the 8 and all the zeros afterward, increase this by 1. So that'd be 5.7 times 10 to the 5th. And again, that's how you do multiplication division. Oh, let's do one more. All right, the operation we're doing, we're taking 3.222 times 10 to the 12 and dividing it by 1.56 times 10 squared, 10 to the second power. Now, the first thing I would ask you to do is, how many significant figures does each number have? Then, which one of those numbers is lower? All right, time's up. The first one, all non-zero numbers are significant. So 3, 2, 2, 2 has 4 significant figures. The second number, 1.56, all non-zero numbers are significant, has 3 significant. So you have 4 and 3. What's the lower number? Hopefully I'll pick 3. So when you do multiplication division, the number you get should have the same number of significant figures as the number that has the lowest significant figures. In this case, it's 3. Drum roll and push enter. And that's what my calculator, look at that number. How do you round that off to 3 significant figures? Your turn. All right, let's do it. Rounding this off to 3 significant figures, you have the 2, the 0, and the 6. Those are my 3 significant figures. use the 5 to round off. Is that 4 or less or 5 or higher? Hopefully I'll pick 5 or higher. Drop the 5, drop the 3, drop the 8, drop the 4, drop the 6, increase the 6 to 7. So that would be 2.07. Now, since I have it formatted, this is going to put a lot of zeros in there, but times 10 to the 10th. And that's how you do multiplication division. Now, addition and subtraction is different. At first, it took me a while when I was an undergrad to wrap my brain around this. First of all, in this class, I don't think we do any subtraction, but you will later on do division, or addition. And the answer has no more digits to the right, meaning significant figures to the right of the decimal point than are found in the measurement, the number you're adding, that has the fewest significant figures to the right of the decimal point. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look. Let's say we're adding these two numbers. Everybody see my whiteboard? Thumbs up, people. Thank you. And by the way, if I ever make a mistake, because I'm doing this in my head, this would be the number your calculator will give you. But here's our decimal point. You look to the right of the decimal point. Remember, all numbers to the right of the decimal are significant. So this has two significant figures. This has one to the right of the decimal point. So our answer should have the same number of significant figures to the right of the decimal point as the number that has the fewest significant figures. Well, if we look only to the right of the decimal, we keep this one, use that to round off. That's 5 or higher. So the correct answer using significant figures for that addition is 5.2. Now let's look at this one. If I do it on my calculator will give me this number. Now, again, when you do addition, you have the same number of significant figures to the right of the decimal as the number that has the fewest. And all numbers, including 0, are significant to the right of the decimal. This has 1, 2, 3. This has 1, 2. So our number should have, what's the lowest number? Hopefully I'll pick 2, should have 2 significant figures. Therefore, how do you round this off? You only look to the right of the decimal, and here you have 1, 2. This is the number to round off. That's 4 or less. I'll drop it. So the correct answer here is 3.11. And we'll do more of these, and also it's in the practice problems. Oh my goodness, I look at the clock. Time flies when you're having fun with significant figures in Dr. White. Remember, this is sort of building the foundation of this semester. And if you go out and look at it, you're having your own new house built. Are you going to have people over when they dig and pour the cement in for the foundation and a party? Look at my foundation. No, you're going to wait until the house is built. But if you don't have a good foundation, your house is going to crumble or it won't be there that good. All right. Remember, do the practice problems for next Tuesday. Do your lab. And if you haven't already handed it in, don't forget to hand in the signature sheet in the assignment area. And one thing I have to say is, you survived the first week of chemistry. Hopefully you feel good about that. I do. And with that, I'm going to say, have a great rest of the weekend. I'll see you on Monday. Don't forget, wear your mask, and don't forget, get your shot if you haven't been vaccinated. I have a long time ago. With that, gang gesund. Goodbye. I stole that from Beverly Hillbillies Granny. Bye now. Gang gesund. Be healthy. It's dangerous out there. Wear your mask. Wash your hands.